Good afternoon. This is the Wednesday, June 5th meeting of the Planning Commission. Can we have roll call, please?
Planning Commissioners Astorian.
Here.
Landrigan.
Here.
Lee. Sheets.
Here.
And Chairperson Yesayan.
Here. All right, report regarding posting of agenda.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, May 29th, 2013, on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website.
Thank you. Can everybody please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have any comments on the minutes? And passed around.
I move approval.
Second.
Hey, can we have roll call, please?
Planning Commissioners Astorian.
Yes.
Landrigan.
Yes.
Sheets.
Aye.
Chairperson Yesayan.
Aye. All right, I don't have any oral communication cards, so let's move on. And we do have Mr. Lee on his way, so I guess we can get started with this case. Actually, no, this first case is the one we're going to have to vote on, so we need Mr. Lee here. And that's parking reduction permit number PPRP 1211310. So I'm going to move that. Let's see, what's our next case? The parking exception case. For the San Fernando, we also need Mr. Lee for that.
I think, Mr. Chair, those are findings that for
Yeah, the
for
finding,
denial.
because
Yes.
we continued from last time.
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we take that case, the PPP EX 1231816. This is item number B under old business, and we'll take that first until Mr. Lee is here.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. On May 15th of this year, you heard an appeal of an approval of a parking exception case regarding a church which was proposing to locate at 4551 San Fernando Road without providing the minimum number of required parking spaces. You continued the case for staff to prepare findings for denial of the parking exception. Before you in your packets are the revised findings for your review and consideration and for your motion to deny the parking exception.
Great. Do you have any comments? Or reading still?
No,
Nothing.
Looking,
You don't have any comments?
I think I have the wrong.
No.
You
You want?
Here it is.
I have it right here. If you'd like to look at
Oh,
it.
I have that. Thank you.
Okay.
It's ready.
If we have no comments, do we have a motion?
I can read the motion into record.
Great.
I hereby move that upon review and consideration of all material and exhibits of current record relative to parking exception permit case number PPEX 1231816, located at 4551 San Fernando Road, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby sustains the Community Development Director's decision. This is the wrong
Not
motion.
sustains, yeah.
Let me reread the motion again. The alternate motion is what we are
Yeah.
trying to put on record. I hereby move that upon review and consideration of materials that exhibits current record relative parking exception permit case number PPEX 1231816, located at 45 San Fernando Road, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, that the Planning Commission hereby reverses the Community Development Director's decision and denies said parking exception permit case number PPEX 1231816 in accord with revised findings and conditions.
Second.
Great. Can we have roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. All right, why don't we go ahead with the alley vacation? case, if you guys are okay with that. Sure. Be the next new business, and then we'll go back to the old business item A once Mr. Lee is here. So this is new business item A, alley vacation case number 171V. Location is west of Brand Boulevard, south of Chevy Chase Drive, and north of Palmer Avenue. And the applicant is Star Ford Lincoln. Can we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The commission's role is to make findings as to whether the alley vacation will be consistent with the general plan. I'd like to come up to the TV screen and show you the general configuration. This is the proposed Ford development site. This building will be demolished as part of the development, and this alley, this is the existing public alley. This existing public alley will be moved from this location over to here. And the current alley is 15 feet wide. The new alley will be 20 feet wide. The north-south portion will be 20 feet wide. The east-west portion of the alley will remain unchanged, but essentially we're moving the alley from here over to here. The alley is not shown on the circulation element, so any vacation or relocation of the alley would not be in conflict with the circulation element. The Planning Commission has already, the Design Review Board has already looked at the design of the project and considered the alley as part of that, the alley relocation as part of that also. So based on this, these facts, the staff recommends that the alley vacation be found to be consistent with the general plan. Do you have any questions?
There are no utilities underneath the existing alley that will be impacted by being put on private property with the switch?
Well,
Sometimes alleys have infrastructure and right-of-ways and...
I'm not actually sure whether there's any existing utilities under the alley, but it'll all be part of the Ford site at that point, so they'll be responsible for relocating or dealing with any utilities that might be under there and moving them, if necessary, to the new public alley location. It won't be under different ownership. It'll all be under...
So any of the public utilities that are part of the public alley will now revert to the new public alley?
They'll either be moved or be incorporated, maybe abandoned
Okay.
in place or whatever is appropriate.
Okay.
I guess one quick question, is this actually a vacation? Yeah, street vacation, okay.
Technically, it's called a street vacation, but we're not actually vacating, we're not abandoning, the city's not giving up any right-of-way.
Right.
We're moving the right-of-way and actually making it wider.
Just shifting
There
it.
is,
Yes.
there are telephone poles in there. And they'll move?
Yeah,
That was why I asked.
that was already part of the Ford
Okay.
proposal to
All
deal
right.
with those telephone poles, yes.
All right. Do we have any other comments, questions? We have a motion.
Sure. I move that upon consideration of the vacation case number 171V, and after receiving the records, files, reports, and all documentary evidence submitted with regard to said street vacation, subject to compliance with State Government Code Section 65402 and Chapters 2.68 and 12.24 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the Planning Commission hereby makes each and all of the following findings of fact as stated in the motion.
Second.
Great. Can we have a roll call?
Planning Commissioners Astorian,
Yes.
Landrigan,
Yes.
Sheets,
Aye.
Chairperson Yesayan.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Our next item is item number B. Their new business is 130 North Central Avenue. The Central Wilson project. The location is 130 North Central Avenue. Applicant is HPG Central plus Wilson LLC. We have a staff report.
Yes, Chairman. Wait for five-member commission. There are items.
Is he okay? So why don't we just take a recess? Okay, let's take a recess until we have everyone here. Great, thanks.
Sorry, I'm going to say it, but
Ready, break.
they're not here.
Okay.
I kind of thought that.
And I thought
They thought it's all the way at the end. We're back from our short recess, and we let the record show that we have Mr. Chang Lee, who's joined us since then.
Oh, did you want one too?
And we are going to jump back a little bit to old business item A, parking reduction permit number PPRP 1211310, location 515 South Glendale Avenue. And can we have a staff report? Or does the staff have any comments?
Just a quick note. If you recall, this case was last reviewed on May 15th, and the commission continued the case to have a full quorum, which we do have today. And also, we did note a notation in the staff report, just for clarification. We spoke to the appellant, actually approached us, and we had a discussion regarding how the parking and calculation is presented in the original staff report, where it states that there's a shortfall of 14 spaces. We revisited that, so there's clarification in terms of what the existing parking is there now, what would it be if it were built today, and the final outcome is basically the proposed project will result in a parking shortfall increasing by 6 spaces total. That would be based on 8 spaces short today, taking into account what they have there now and the mix of uses, and 14 spaces short with the proposed project if it were built today with the addition.
Mm-hmm.
So we just want to clarify that for the record.
Okay.
If they were built new.
Correct. They would be 14 spaces short.
Now, I do have one speaker card on this, but did we close the public hearing last time?
Yes, as I recall from the record, the public hearing was closed.
Okay, I'd like to open it up because there's some new information since then. To
Within
hear.
the Planning Commission's prerogative.
What's that?
That is within the Planning Commission's prerogative.
Okay, well, if you guys are okay with that, we have one speaker.
Let's make sure our celebrity commissioner is okay with it too.
Is that okay? All right. So let me open it up, the public hearing, and we have Speaker Garo Nazarian, and he represents the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Garo Nazarian with Domus Design. We are representing the owner of the business and the landlord of the project. everything it has been discussed, and the Milcop correctly presented the memo or addendum that they added to the staff report. Just I wanted, to add whatever it's short today, it's not short. It's a grandfathered situation, and the grandfathered situation is not considered a shortage. The existing site, it's operating with so much parking spaces, and the project, the changes, and the addition we are proposing to this site, it creates 6 shortage because of the proposed project. So whatever it's in grandfathered, how many parking spaces that the site has already, we are considering a grandfathered. The shortage caused by the proposed project, it's 6. And this, as we discussed in the previous meeting too, this change or increase of the floor area usage is not additional to a public space, the retail space, which can create, more traffic, more public approaching to the business. This is just a work area and a storage area.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that's our last card. Do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Lee? No? I'm going to close the public hearing. We'll enter deliberation. Anyone like to say anything they haven't previously said? Or add to what they've said before?
Well, I'd like to. We don't have 14 parking spaces short anymore. According to what I have in front of me, we only have 6. And that makes it much more easier for me to vote for it.
Okay.
Mr. Yasayan?
Yes.
I would disagree. We still have 14 because it is being changed. The grandfathered is if the existing element was not going to change. They are changing it from residential to commercial, so there is a change. So there are still 14 short. Those 14 that were grandfathered in is if you maintain the existing use and scale and size. When you add to it, you incur new requirements, and you have to adhere to the code as it is. So the 6 were there. It is already a non-conforming, impacted situation. It will become more non-conforming and impacted because of the addition of 6. So I would disagree with your interpretation. I understand what you're saying, and I understand what they're saying, but in essence, it's the same number of impacted for that community and that street.
Mr. Shi?
I'm not surprised for you disagreeing with my point of view.
Well, I think it's interesting, the parking survey finds a number of spaces that are available on street on peak hours. And then they also have spaces that are available during peak hours that are off-street parking within the complex. So I would read that as meeting the requirements, the demands of the parking that the project is requiring. Mr. Lee?
This is a tough one because they're not really intensifying the usage of the retail that they have there now, and they wanted to just continue to use that. But by triggering the renovation there, obviously, the parking study shows that it is short, and not only few parking spaces short, but I'm having difficulty to really grant something that is the codes are not there to really cover all cases, and there are some exceptions, but not to the extent where we have to grant such a variance or such a granting of this type of a parking space, I do have some issues with that, and I have problems with that.
So I assume you're not going to be granting the exception.
No, unless I hear something something very.
Well, I think the reason I would be in favor of it is if we look at it strictly by the square footage of what is being put in, as far as retail square footage, then, and what that requires, then I understand. But if we look at the actual type of use that is going to happen after this is put in, then we see there's a refrigeration space that's added. And then the rest of it is office space. So it's not adding new retail where new customers are going to come, but it's adding space where they can put more cakes into storage. These are cakes that are larger and that they'll be more likely to be delivered with trucks that they rent out from another place. So that's what swayed my opinion to make this exception.
Yeah, I mean, I do see a point in that, I think this business has more takeouts and more carryouts because of the cake house. And, obviously, like I said, I do not believe this is going to intensify the usage. And they probably have parking space. It's just that coming down to the fundamental, the fact that it just is asking just too much, in my opinion.
Sure.
So, I do see that by having the refrigeration spaces, and I'm all pro development. I love to have these people continue to be successful in the city of Glendale, and we do like to promote business growth, and we should support that activities. So, you know what? I haven't made my decision yet, but let me. I need one minute to think about this.
And I'd like to. Did you, Commissioner?
Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I can wait for you.
My only comment is, at this time, I don't feel different. I have the same concerns that other commissioners have brought up and the same feelings as far as it's not about stifling business. As I stated last time, it's more about the larger picture. Personally, I feel any parking study that includes off-street parking or street parking is not good, because any day I take that, it's going to be something totally different, and we know that on Glendale Avenue and Central and some of those streets, that's the case. So that comes out of my equation. But the other part is, if I take that particular business and all other businesses on Glendale Avenue and some of these streets that have been there forever and have these wonderful shops, they all have the same problem. And the second they make the changes, they're going to be impacting that parking and that traffic the same way. And maybe I'm missing the picture, but to me, and this is just my interpretation, the expansion will generate more business because it's making space to make more product. So that's how I'm seeing that. It's not very complicated for me there. And that's good. That's what you want to do. It's just that in this case, I don't see enough information or evidence for me to approve this.
And if I may, and here's the interesting twist on all of this. And I'm going to use an analogy. There was a report in Wall Street Journal today that Class A office building, the usage per employee is dropping, and it's dropping quickly. However, the common area use and other uses in conjunction with that, with the tech and so forth, is increasing. So which one is it? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? What I'm getting at is very simple. You have a business, and I respect what you just said, and you use the word intensifying the use. You see, there is the difference between this commissioner and you. The use may intensify, but not in a manner that is going to create or exacerbate any parking use. You have your kitchen increasing, their delivery business is increasing. These are the kind of differences. So, yeah, the use may intensify, but how is that use intensity, the type of the intensity, how is it going to affect the parking? That's number one. Number two, we have a certified traffic engineer's report in front of us that says, look, we've looked at it and we're okay with it. We don't think it's going to create much of a problem. Number three, nothing in our ordinance, per Mr. Foy's testimony last time, or the staff testimony last time, this allows an engineer using public parking. Public parking is not out there for showcasing it. Public parking is out there to be used. It's a good problem to have the moment that those parking spaces are being used. So those are the reasons that I don't think the intensification that is being referred to here in this commission is as such that is going to affect the parking or exacerbate the already existing parking situation. That's why I will be voting yes for it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, and I am in concurrence with Mr. Sheets' assertion that if you increase product, you increase trips. So they'll have more cakes to deliver, which is a great thing. That's why they're doing this. They want to have more business. And if they have more cakes that are being picked up, they'll have more business. The problem I have with using city parking spaces, and I believe that it should be a problem all of us should have, is that they are there for residents within a certain circumference and not one business alone. And by putting them into this equation, you are taking them out of the play of every other adjacent owner, as well as every resident there that may use it. And to me, that is not what our city should be doing, is providing 6 or 4 parking spaces that are for one business alone. Whether the code specifically says they can or cannot be applied, they are paid for by every citizen, and even though you pay, short-term people tend not to pay for their parking spaces and take their chances. So if there's a rapid turnover, I see a cost to the city. So I believe that city parking places are there for every citizen and every business within that block and not one. So putting it into that equation seems reasonable because it's adjacent to that. But it is, not their calculation. You as a realtor understand that all of the activities on a property need to be taken care of on a property and not sent to another property.
And I, as a realtor, also understand the concept of reciprocal use quite well.
Right.
And I understand that a resident does not park away from the house on Glendale Avenue if he has a choice to park across the street from the house. So there is a give and get. There is no questions about it.
There's also one other thing, is that we are actually diminishing the residential parking space, which should not be calculated into the use of the other parking spaces. So that calculation could even be less here, but we are putting it all together as one. It is required that there be 2 parking spaces for residential. There's now 1, and that can't be included into the commercial, and it is being kind of all put together into one idea. So I think we're being given a shell game here to look at, and to me, I think it all comes down to that there's not enough parking, and that's what we should be addressing.
We're also reducing the residential too, so they'll be
But still,
using less parking
each
for that.
residential needs 2 parking spaces.
But then if the issue is the residential parking, why don't we make that as a condition?
So it's
Because it's more than that.
It's really nice to have this dialogue. And cases like this make me appreciate the differences of opinions that our commission has. One case that we did a couple months ago, which is the complex on Colorado. If you guys remember, it's a bar that opened up and we gave a parking exception. I don't think we had a unanimous decision on it. But I did go over there last week, and what we also did was require some bike spaces as well. and I think some were worried about just how much of a problem that would create of not of making a parking exception for that bar. And I went there, and I was surprised to find the bike locks that we did require in the alley completely full. So I really recommend you guys go and check it out.
Great.
And I didn't have much trouble finding parking at night. So I thought that was a good example of
Were you on
what
bike?
we were. What's that?
Were you on your bike?
No, I was actually with my car. But what we perceived as might being more of a problem than might be was less so. But that was just one day that I went. But I think these are the types of areas that we have to look at and review to see if the same parking standards that we have for this part of South Glendale, or the same parking standards we have for all of Glendale should apply at the same level to these areas where there isn't more of an intensification of walking. There are people who come there with other modes. That's not always very possible in other places in Glendale. And to me, it doesn't seem reasonable to have the same level requirement as these areas. Like the applicant said, they have a number of employees who walk there, who take the bus, and that's just not possible in other places that we would require the same amount of parking. I don't think this kind of parking exception for this would lead to the same intensification as other developments in other areas in Glendale.
Would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
I move that upon review and consideration of all materials and exhibits of current record relative to parking reduction permit case number PPRP 12-11-31-0, located at 515 South Glendale Avenue, and after having conducted an appeal hearing on said matter, the Planning Commission hereby sustains the planning hearing officer's decision denying said parking reduction permit case in accord with the findings set forth in the decision letter of December 20th, 2012.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, can we have roll call?
Planning Commissioners Astorian,
Nope.
Landrigan,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Sheets,
Aye.
and Chairperson Yesayan.
No. All right. Is there anything I need to read for this? No? Okay. Thanks. So the case that we just denied can be appealed to the City Council and for further information you can talk to staff. Sure. All right, our next item. We have under new business item number B, 130 North Central Avenue, Central plus Wilson project, location 130 North Central Avenue. Can we have staff report for this project, please?
Yes, Chairman Asayan, Planning Commissioners, we have a brief PowerPoint presentation both from staff and from the applicant. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to turn off the lights and
Great.
continue on.
The lights.
Mm-hmm.
It's too dark, or can you adjust it up?
That's
Good,
That's
thank
good.
you.
This screen's good.
Okay, the item before you this evening is a development agreement for a Central Wilson project. Now, typically development agreements lock in terms of development, and this is what is being proposed. California state statute requires that the Planning Commission review the development agreements before they go on to City Council for approval. The Central Wilson project is actually a 6-story mixed-use project. It's located on the southeast corner of Central and Wilson. The applicant has a PowerPoint presentation which will include various visuals, both of the elevations, the floor plans, et cetera, et cetera. So you will have quite a bit of detail shown to you by the applicant. So I'm going to wait to, instead of going into all the various details of the projects themselves. So I'm just going to speak specifically on the development agreement. This particular development agreement that you had in your staff packet pertained to three main items. One was that the development agreement proposes a 14-year term. Most approvals are good for a period of 2 years. They are proposing a 14-year term because the property is currently occupied by a tenant that has a lease with 2 5-year renewal options. So the current lease for this tenant expires in November 2014. If the renewal options are utilized, essentially the project would remain occupied until the year 2024. The applicant has also requested an additional 2-year period in order to go through the plan check process and obtain all required financing once the property is vacated. So again, this is proposing a 14-year term. The development agreement also includes a covenant for the additional open space incentive. This particular project provides well above and beyond the minimum code requirements for publicly accessible open space. By providing this additional open space, they are able to obtain additional floor area ratios. So the development agreement would specifically speak to this additional open space incentive being used according to the downtown specific plan. Last but not least, the development agreement provides for 2 prepayment options for impact fees. These would be the impact fees relating to Parks and Rec and the impact fees relating to the library. The 2 prepayment options would include one, either to completely pay all of the required impact fees at the close of escrow, or to allow for a 50% payment at 1-year anniversary of the recording date of the development agreement, with the remaining 50% to be paid sometime prior to the building permit issuance at whatever rate is at the time of payment. So these would be the 2 prepayment options for the impact fees. As specified in your staff report, the development agreement is consistent with the general plan, and it is also consistent with the downtown specific plan. The project is located in the Broadway Center sub-area A, and with the additional open space incentive bonus, they comply with all of the development standards for the Broadway Center district. Staff basically recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the findings of the development agreement's consistency with the general plan and downtown specific plan as spelled out in your staff report, that you recommend approval of the proposed development agreement to the City Council. So again, tonight's item for your purview is just for the recommendation of the development agreement. I would like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Tom Warren, who is with Holland Partners, the developer for the project, and Mr. Rodney Khan. And at this point in time, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, forgive me. Does staff
do we have
have
any questions and comments before we?
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Regarding the 14-year retirement period, was there any discussion if, let's say, Big Five does not take that option or take the first option? So, pertains to, how they exercise their option periods for the retirement, term to be, changed accordingly.
Yes. Well, the development agreement says essentially that once the properties are vacated, the developer has a specific period of time, I believe it is 4 years, in order to go through their financing, go through the permit process, and actually construct the project itself.
So we have that clause in there.
There is a locked-in time period for continued development of the property.
So that trumps over the 14-year.
Correct.
Okay,
so
thank you.
yes, they would be able to go ahead and develop the project before that, but if the lease agreements are utilized to the full
Right.
extent possible, this allows for the developer to ultimately develop his project within the 14.
Okay,
If
thank
I
you.
may, Mr. Chair, what the distinction is this: if the Big Five decides not to exercise their option prior to the 10 years, then they have 4 years to take advantage of the development agreement. However, if the Big Five decides to exercise their 2 options, then they have 2 years after that, which would add up to the 12 years.
Right.
Ms. Landrigan.
Can I ask why 4 years instead of a typical 2? I mean, it seems that we're really being quite generous here to the advantage of the city. I mean, we're going to make a recommendation to council. I want to know that.
Yes. Actually, that was a question that was the subject of a lot of discussion between us and the applicant and the developer. And their request was a little bit more than that, and we settled on 4. The reason is the complications with financing and the unpredictability of if, say, for example, 5 years from now, that opportunity comes up, the market conditions might be very different, and the applicant asks for a little bit more time in case the financing is not going to be as available to them at that time as it is today, perhaps, then they will have more time to secure the financing. And that seemed reasonable to us.
Any other questions?
I do have one more question. The prepayment options for the park and library fees. I guess the question I have is, they are based upon the cost of the project, am I correct? No, they are based upon the square footage?
The development impact fees are based on a preset figure per unit and also a preset figure for commercial square footage. So currently, the amounts are $7,000 per unit and $2.30 odd cents per square foot of commercial area. Those fees may go up, and so the prepayment option allows them to utilize the current fees as opposed to waiting for any fees that might be in place, such as 12 years from now.
If I may add, also, if they take advantage of any of the prepaid options, that fund will be non-refundable.
Correct.
And the city will get to keep that. So that is the one advantage that would be for the public in case they take advantage of the pre-option.
Even if they pay in full at the beginning, is the full thing not refundable?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
In that same vein, what came to mind as I was reviewing this around the open space, and it's not, I guess, just specific to this project, but the type of open space that is part of the project, part of the development, relative to the types of open space that, say, the city's recreation element might call for. Is there any connection to that, or any kind of comparison or expectation that comes with this, or is it just if they provide open space within the project, that's adequate?
There are standards outlined in the downtown specific plan, and they are very specific to the downtown area for the uses of the downtown urban area. And there are some guidelines and standards that actually make them available to the public, so they're not basically fencing off the public from that, and then they're both visually and physically available to the public. So in essence, they tend to expand the experience at the sidewalk or create corners for people to gather and congregate in the different parts of the urban core. That's really the difference.
I understand. So then, I guess where I'm going, if I refer back to the recreation element, again, the kind of specific things that the recreation element has identified that the city needs. There's no priority list or no suggestion, no recommendation to say, based on the rec element, we need these things. Does your plan or can your plan incorporate any of those type of spaces? Is something like that?
No, in this case, the parks impact fee that they pay is mitigating that particular requirement, and the incentive program in the downtown specific plan strictly is put in to to enhance the experiment of the sidewalk and the urban landscape, and it's really not related to the recreation.
And my question, the project, I don't have a problem with that, and it's more an area that I have some sensitivity about, because to me, if I look back when I was on the Parks Commission, we made the recreation element, and I look at what the process does with the paying the fee as opposed to the space, and I look at where those monies go and priority lists and a focused organized list of what we're going to do. Sometimes I think we lose that. So I was just trying to make a link that if is it possible in future projects that we go that far with the rec element recommendations. I know we're not doing that, but I kind of was trying to bring that to light.
If I may, Mr. Chair, actually, that is a legitimate concern. That is a general plan level discussion that, and as part of the community plans that we do, we are looking at the recreation element requirements, and we'll be proposing adjustments to the requirements based on the context. That'll be done as part of the South Glendale Community Plan for this particular area, and but that's different than the downtown specific plan standards.
I understand, and I think the projects, these kind of projects, are wonderful, and I think if somehow I could mentally make those things clear to the staff, and we do drive that in that direction, that everybody benefits. Because now we have the kind of things here that people want to participate in relative to the development in other areas. So anyway, thank you.
So then do I understand this correctly, Mr. Regani, that the development would occur the earlier of 4 years from extinguishing of the lease, or 12 years or 14 years if the lease is not extinguished?
12 years if the lease is not extinguished. Let's say they take the option for one-time renewal and it happens in 5 years, then they have 4 years after that 5 years if that option is not renewed for the second time.
I have a question. On page 1, it talks about the 5 live-work units in a podium-type mixed-use design. What does that mean?
Correct. Essentially, they are providing subterranean garage, and then the podium is going to be built up base concrete base on the ground floor, and wood frame structure up above for the residential units. The live work units, which could be, there are 2 options for this project. One is to have 4,900 square feet of commercial space along Central, or those tenant areas may also be used for 5 live-work areas. So the project contains 2 options, which I believe the developer will be presenting in his PowerPoint presentation.
Podium means just that
type
it's
of
above.
construction.
Okay, got it. There's levels. Okay. And is there any requirement as far as the live-work units to have some open access to the street? So there's some.
All 5 of those live-work.
So it is
units will
enhancing
be.
the livability of the street?
Correct. All of those units will have direct access to Central Avenue.
Okay. Great.
May I ask one more question? Sure. This is being proposed meeting all existing codes, so no variances or conditional use permits. If they come back with those, does that nullify the DA? And because to me, that's an important piece of information to know.
At this point in time, this project does not require any variances. It complies with all of the development standards set forth in the Downtown Specific Plan and in the zoning code. So.
And yeah, what you're asking is that if they do ask for any kind of exceptions that would nullify, that would be inconsistent with the development agreement. They would be subject to new hearings.
Right.
That's right.
And I assume the EIR will happen at another date.
Thank you for bringing that up. This particular project features, as included in your staff report, an addendum to the 2006 Downtown Specific Plan Program EIR. So the environmental impacts have been analyzed, and there is an addendum that was included in your staff report.
Can I disagree with one of your findings?
So there was an addendum for the EIR?
There is an addendum to the EIR.
I didn't see that.
It was actually included in a disc simply because of the size. correct.
Like 300
312 pages, correct.
Okay.
So,
Well, I didn't get to review that. Anything that jumped out at you guys?
Yes, I have one question, and it may be a problem of all of them from now on.
Yeah.
Yes?
If I may, concerning the addendum, an addendum to an EIR is only appropriate where there are no significant impacts identified or no worsening of existing or previously identified significant effects. So in a nutshell, what that means is this development fits within the envelope of impacts that was already analyzed as part of the Downtown Specific Plan EIR. And one of the reasons for doing a program EIR is just so that you can tier off of it when future projects come along and fit within that previously identified envelope. Of course, we were looking at project year compared to the year that the EIR was approved to assure that that was in fact the case, and so that we feel comfortable and therefore have prepared an addendum to that EIR because it does fit within that envelope of impacts.
So an addendum means it's just there's a program EIR for the whole downtown area that's been done, and an addendum is this specific project doesn't meet the what has been previously analyzed.
In looking at the project level,
anything
does this,
significant or not?
exactly, does this project have any project level specific impacts that were not identified, or does it worsen any of the impacts that were previously identified within that program level EIR? And it did not, and that's the basis for preparing an addendum. If that were the case, we could not prepare addendum another higher level environmental review document such as a focused EIR or supplemental subsequent EIR would have had to have been prepared, but it was not appropriate in these circumstances.
So just to clarify, are we saying that there was an addendum for this development, or it fits within an addendum that already exists?
We prepared an addendum for this project.
And so my question is when I was reading the EIR, which I looked at this online, so that made it a lot easier for me to find the EIR. So, in the scenic highway section, we have a scenic highway, and it says that the existing buildings will not impact the views of the Verdugo Mountains, and they're doubling the size. That determination was in the original EIR, is that what you're telling me? And so that if they're meeting within the height of the DSP, then it's in conformance, and that's why it's an addendum.
That's correct. There is a building height envelope that was analyzed in the EIR, and it fits within that height envelope. And so the determination that was made then, those views being analyzed from the street level, looking down the existing view corridors.
At the original EIR, we assumed the maximum height of everything, and then we analyzed the most possible impactful development pattern, and based on that, this is not going to exceed that.
And most of these were approved for high rises, 20 and 22 stories, not 6 stories as being built. So,
Great. I'm going to ask the applicants to come up now. Thanks for waiting. We have Rodney Kahn and Tom Warren. All right. And they have 15 minutes between the two of you.
Hi, I'm Tom Warren. I'm with Holland Partners. We're a multifamily mixed-use development group out of the Pacific Northwest, but we have a large office down here in Southern California. We currently have 4 projects under construction in Southern California, and we finished one just a little earlier this year, which is leasing up very well in downtown Los Angeles. We focus our work on the urban core, walkable areas where we can bring housing to locations that already have jobs and amenities and give people an opportunity to enjoy their community. Downtown San Diego, Huntington Beach, downtown LA, we have a couple buildings under construction here in Glendale, and we're very excited to be part of this community, and it's the reason we're looking at this additional project here. Glendale, I think, is a very special place. I'm looking forward to seeing more residents in the downtown, and I know you guys are seeing quite a bit of development, but I think it's going to be a good thing for the city, for the shops, the businesses, the street traffic. I was here last Saturday shopping for my daughter's prom dress at the Galleria, and it was nice to be here on a weekend. I spent a lot of time here during the week, and it was nice to walk around on the weekend and see how much more foot traffic there is even then. So that's really the reason we're developing in Glendale. Our first two projects are under construction. We have partnered up with UBS. It's a large, financing group to fund those projects, and it's with that partner that we're looking at doing this project as well. That there's a challenge, as we've described here in the existing tenant. We made some initial had some initial discussion with Big Five, and they weren't at a decision point. So we stepped back and looked at the opportunity. Have a big investment already. This could be a way to complete this block and really round out the area there from Brand to Central on Wilson, so it would have a real consistent character. We just decided that as stakeholders in this location that it would be worth it to buy the land, regardless of whether Big Five leaves immediately or exercises their options, and to develop as soon as it's possible. So that's the reason we're asking for this development agreement, is for the time. UBS took this to their investment committee and said, this is it's a thin retail deal because we're having to pay more for the land. We might just picking it up that way, but it's in range, and if they can justify holding on to it for as long as it takes for Big Five to leave, then we'd like to have the opportunity to develop. So they said, we'll agree to close on the land if you, Tom, can deliver a development agreement that gets us past the outside date of Big Five's lease. And so that's what we're trying to do here. I should give you a project overview, which I've got here. I just flipped the...
Roll up and down.
Okay, let's see. Oh, we're going the wrong way.
Sorry, we're going opposite way.
Is it the end? There we go. Okay. Sensitive. Okay. Well.
Why don't you let me...
But, yeah, why don't you...
A bit sensitive.
You just... Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, so you can see here the location map. The green area to the right is Brandon Wilson, and that's a project we're under, as you know, we're 2 stories down. Then we have Orange and Wilson here, and that's a sort of a sister project. We entitled them separately and permitted them separately, but because we have the same investor, we're planning to operate them sort of as one project. Then this site is adjacent here, and really, you can see how this will just complete the block. There's some massive buildings in the city center. One, the legacy-owned office tower there, 20-story office tower. There's an office building to the south. The context of this is a bulky, downtown, and we've specifically designed the projects, and Brandon Wilson in particular, to fit into the community. It's a 20-story granite office tower. You can't put a 3-story, wood, small building next to it and have it fit in. So we've taken great care with all of this to fit into the context. And if you could flip to the next. You can see here how the 3 buildings, how the 2 buildings that are approved will ultimately look, and then the blank spot here it's almost crying for an additional building. So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm excited to see how this will all come out. I think that the streetscape on Wilson will be really improved. Orange Street, which runs north-south there. We've created a axis here, or sort of an anchor to this pedestrian spine that is contemplated in the specific plan, and think that these 2 buildings that are existing will be a nice complement to it. So maybe the next shot. This is a rendering of how this would look from Central Avenue. This is shorter than the other 2 buildings, and that's been done to scale down the massing as we're approaching going to the west, and there's residential a few blocks over. It's a little ways over to the west. The downtown specific plan contemplates 6-7-story buildings on both sides of Central in this location, and so we expect to at some point have a similar building of similar scale across the street. But then you go past that further, and it does get into residential, so we wanted to respect that with the scale. The orange portal that you see there, that connects the open space. It's a U-shaped building. I guess you could go one more. It's a U-shaped building that faces Orange and Wilson, so that their courtyards face each other, and the open space between them will ultimately be shared. And if you're walking from the Orange and Wilson courtyard across to this project, at some point you can go out on the promontory that's in purple here. There you go. That would provide pedestrians access to the street, and so they can walk through with the building and interact with that. But it also keeps some of the noise of Central from getting into the quieter parts of the project. So as we said earlier, the project meets all of the downtown specific plan areas requirements. We're not asking for any variances. As Hassan said, I mean, if we were to want a variance later, we'd have to come before the council and ask for that in a separate application. But in order for us to use this development agreement, we have to be compliant with the code, and it is, and we intend to. It's fully parked. It's per the code for either the option of 158 units, where 5 of those are live work, or the option of 153 units with 4,000 square feet of commercial areas. And the reason we were looking for that flexibility is, again, at the point in time when this is ultimately, when we're able to work out a deal with Big Five or they leave, we don't know what the environment's going to be like. So we are trying to plan some flexibility into this. As far as the open space goes, there were some questions. We are a little beyond the base FAR that's set forth in the specific plan, and the specific plan has some bonus provisions that if we provide additional open space, we can get additional FAR. And so we are utilizing one of those bonuses with the square footage, and the ground plane, all of this additional square footage we're providing, the open space we're providing, is in the ground plane. So it's not up on the courtyard, accessible to our residents only. It's all of the square footage that we're adding to meet this bonus provision is on the sidewalk, and it's actually we're creating in dark blue here. There you go. Thank you. On the corner, a plaza, a pedestrian plaza, that will, with benches and area, it's a pretty large area. What we've highlighted in the blue, and then you see the green, the lighter aqua color around there. That's also open space, but that's not the bonus open space. And then beyond that, you can see the sidewalk. So the part that we've highlighted in color is only the additional open space we're providing on our property. You'll also have the sidewalk there that adds to the width. And there's a design here we'll show for that open space. It's small, but you can see coming from the L shape that goes into the building, that is where you would park if you're accessing the retail and come through a portal, and the open space there is available to people who are going to the retail or the live work or just the general public if they want to hang out in the shade there. So I wanted to address a couple of questions you guys had. I think I explained the reason for the development agreement, and we want to move forward with this as quickly as we can. If Big Five agrees to, either agrees to our requests or our offers to help them relocate, or if they just decide not to renew their lease, we would commence immediately in this current environment. If another 5 years passes and maybe it's not a good time to develop, maybe there's too much residential, or the economy's falling apart, or who knows, we've just asked for a little more time to let things heal in order to develop in accordance with this agreement. So that's the reason for the term. If Big Five exercises both of their termination options, we would then it would be November of 2024, and we would have a little over 2 years to get going under this development agreement, or we couldn't rely on it anymore. So that's the reason we've set this up, and so that's the question. The fees that we talked about, those are non-refundable. I mean, in order to lock these in, we have to put the money up now, or at latest 50% in a year, and that's a pretty big bet. I don't know, it's a nice option to have. I don't know whether or not we'll exercise it, but it's something that we've talked about with the city. Really, if we're able to go forward now, that could be an alternative for us. But because it's non-refundable, I think the city could get a significant benefit if we end up paying them and not moving forward. The live work to podium. The podium just refers to the type of building. It's a sort of an industry term, I guess. We build the upper 5 stories of these projects out of wood frame construction because it's much more cost effective than a concrete building. But 5 stories is the most you can build out of wood frame. And the code allows us to put that 5-story wood frame building on top of a concrete podium, which is the parking and usually retail and some leasing facilities, amenities, and then underground parking below that. So that's what podium refers to. And all the live work units will be accessible to the street. They have a door directly.
So this is 6 stories, but so 5 stories can be wood, and the first story is concrete. That's how.
Exactly. Yeah, it's right here.
Okay.
That's wood. That's concrete.
Got it.
Seismically much safer for anybody near it.
So yeah, no, it's all. It's the seismic codes are very stringent here in Southern California, so it will be real stable. And then again, the variance, I already spoke to that. So I would like to have Rodney explain a couple more technical points of our application, and then we're available for questions if you have any.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, and City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. My offices are on North Brand Boulevard here in the city of Glendale. I asked Vilya to go back to this slide. There's really 2 components that I want to touch on, or kind of fill in the gaps from what Tom said. The first is the public open space. But the reason I have this slide up is because this shows public open space along with private open space, along with common open space. So I want to make it very clear that we just don't have public open space. We actually have about 30,000 square feet of open space for our project, and that includes public, balconies, the pool area, etc. So if you look at the downtown specific plan, and we look at our lot size, actually for the public open space, we're required to have 5%, which is about 2,087 square feet. Could you go to the next slide? And as pointed out already by Tom, in the corner of Central and Wilson is where the blue area is. There's some criteria, and Commissioner Sheets, you ask in terms of the standards. Yes, there are standards. There are standards that say that the open space should be usable by the general public, so it's on the ground floor. It should be physically and visually connected to the public sidewalk, which this is, and designed, if you can, as one large continuous space and not scattered about, which is exactly what we did. And then lastly, some type of standards where there's seating or some other type of component, so when people are walking down the street along either Central or Wilson, they have somewhere to sit. So if you go to the next slide, Velia. Thus, the benches that you see in the hardscape where people can sit, it's also covered, so it's comfortable for people to use, and it's also welcoming, which is what we're trying to do as a give back for public open space. The percentage is approximately 64% additional public open space that gives us the additional floor area. Our project does not need additional height. It does not need the number of stories. That's all by right. It's just the slight increase of the floor area that requires us for the open space. That's one part of it. The second part is the parks fee. And it was mentioned in terms of Tom mentioned about it's a risk, it's a gamble, so to speak. And it's not a small gamble. It's about $1.1 million. So it's a significant amount of money that we're talking about being able to prepay or pay based on what criteria that we're suggesting for us to be able to contribute towards the city, and in turn, thus, we are talking about the development agreement terms. So there is absolutely a give back, both in terms of public open space and also in terms of the significant amount of money that is at risk. Anyway, that concludes my remarks, or our remarks. If you have questions, we both can answer them. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Do you have any questions, comments? Ms. Landrigan.
I do. I see that there is a considerable overhang over the sidewalk. Does that intrude to the public open space as an overhang, or does that meet the, it looks like it's different from the adjacent streets? If I'm looking at page 20 on my packet and also page A5, page 6.
It's the corner of...
It's the corner, and it has, and so is that intruding into the open space?
If I
Mr.
may,
Hagani?
the downtown specific plan allows the developer to build on the upper floors to actually expand the square footage over the publicly accessible open space that they provide next to the sidewalk. So that is consistent with the downtown specific plan. The idea was that instead of taking away a notch from the buildings, you actually allow the pedestrian activity to extend onto the property. However, the developer can still build on the top floors and still have the square footage. That is consistent with how it's written in the downtown
I
specific.
believe we've seen that in a number of developments on Central,
But
too.
where does that stop? How far out can they go?
Well, after the first floor, they can actually, the downtown specific plan requires that publicly accessible open space to be on the first floor. However, from the second floor up, they can actually have the square footage cantilevered on top of it. And then that'll be more a subject of design review than a standard at that point.
And it's nearly 20 feet up, the overhang.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not 8 feet. It's it's way up there, like a freeway overpass. So it's
That's why I made reference to the one page that has the heights on it.
So as I understand it, only 50% of the public open space needs to be accessible by the public. And is the space on the corner there, is that full space accessible by the public, or is part of it going to be?
The L shape doesn't all qualify as public open space. Only the top rectangle that was colored in dark blue is. We're not getting credit for the paved area that's further in.
Right.
Only for the portion that is covered in blue.
And the rectangle.
And the.
That's all publicly accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question.
Yeah, Mr. Landrigan.
You have the alleyway. It appears that you're sharing that space with the orange one. Is that calculated into both of these projects as a shared space?
The alley.
Pool is, and those amenities that are on the first floor as opposed to the second.
The opens. Let's see. The Orange and Wilson projects under construction based on permits that are issued without an alley vacation, because that wasn't approved at the time we moved forward with that project. So in this project, because there's no longer a need for the alley, we asked that since if we are building on both sides of it, we'd be allowed to utilize that. And so the alley is all associated with the Central and Wilson project. The alley vacation will be part of the Central and Wilson project. There is some common area that's proposed for what is now the alley. It will be part of the Central and Wilson project. Our plan is to have the Orange and Wilson residents able to access that space, but the calculations, the math, everything that we've done to justify this project it's all on Central and Wilson, and there's no sharing from that standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Do we have any other comments? Do we have a motion? Or we have?
You want to close
There's actually
We can close the. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have any more cards. Would staff like to say any things before we close? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing.
So we have a resolution in front of us which has got section 1, 2, and 3 and 4. You want us to read the ABCs of each section, or can we just make the motion with referring to the sections?
Whatever you wish.
I think we can just read the motion, make the motion. We don't need to read it. Yeah.
Unless you want to modify the proposed resolution, you may just refer to the resolution as reflected in the draft resolution as reflected in your staff report.
And before we make a motion, I just want to say I'm pleased that we are continuing that development that's happening from Brand Wilson to all the way to Central. I think it will go a long way to round off that whole area, as you said, and especially with all the developments that's happening. So I'm pleased that a lot of the downtown specific plan ideas are being implemented by the work you and others are doing. So,
Thank you.
And I think this, yeah, and
that our lender has the foresight to be involved. I mean, this is a new way to approach it, but
of course.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Your plans were very easy to read, the graphics you used, the way you separated elements out. My compliments to you. It made it very easy for us to follow through.
And a good context with what's surrounding it and the future developments to come. So.
And let me I want to just refer back to my questions about the recreation element and open space. Pretty much does not pertain to this project. I commend the project. I know I've seen your work in downtown. I think you're doing the right thing, although in some ways I tend to drag my feet relative to expansion and development in the city just because I've been here so long and it seems to be going so rapidly. But I truly believe this is the kind of thing that is needed. I think you guys are doing the right thing, and I think you're making every effort to cover all the bases and still have a workable project. So I commend you for that.
Any comments? Motion?
I have no comments. So let me just read the motion into the record.
Great.
It's a resolution of Planning Commission. It is a resolution of Planning Commission of the City of Glendale to recommend the approval of development agreement in connection with the Central Wilson project located at 130 North Central Avenue in the City of Glendale, California. The Planning Commission of the City of Glendale does hereby resolve as follows. Section 1. The Planning Commission does hereby find and determines as follows, and we will read the ABC as presented to the commissioners on this dais. Section 2, based upon the testimony and other evidence received, and upon studies and investigations made by the Planning Commission on its behalf, the Planning Commission further finds and determines that the proposed development agreement is consistent with the goals and policies of adopted general plan, and that the proposed action complies with all other applicable requirements of state law and local ordinances. Specifically, said action is consistent with the following policies of the Glendale General Plan and Downtown Specific Plan, and the items are A through H as presented to this Planning Commission on the form. Section 3, based upon the testimony of other evidence received and upon studies and investigations by the Planning Commission on its behalf, the Planning Commission further finds and determines that the proposed development agreement is consistent with the city's general plan and is in the best interest of city and the health and safety and welfare of its residents, and in accord with the public purposes and provisions of applicable state and local law requirements, and recommends approval of the development agreement with the following findings. Again, items A through E as presented to this Planning Commission. Section 4, based upon the foregoing, the Planning Commission resolves the following. Recommend to the City Council the approval of the development agreement.
Second. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
I'm sorry, who is the second? Who is the person?
Mr.
that
Chang Lee.
Oh, Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Planning Commissioners Astorian.
Yes.
Landrigan.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Sheets.
Aye.
Chairperson Yasayan.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're fast with our seconds. Hey, thanks, guys. Next item is planning department updates.
Yes, at the last hearing, or the last meeting, rather, you appointed Chairman Yasayan to serve on our streamlining committee, and I'm going to appoint a second member at this meeting.
Okay. Does Mr. Lee, do you know about this meeting? Because you weren't here last time. No. Someone want to briefly explain to Mr. Lee?
Yeah, we're setting up a committee to study our code. This is upon direction of the City Council. We're looking for ways to streamline our approval processes, and we're forming a committee to study that throughout the summer to make recommendations to the City Council on how our code can be improved.
I think Commissioner Landrigan would be perfect for that position.
Your confidence in me is so warming to my heart.
What a guy.
So I recommend Commissioner Landrigan.
It's funny, she did the same to you last week.
But we voted on you. No.
So we need one person, and
You know
what do you guys think?
If Mr. Lee would be willing to share the duties with me in the times I couldn't attend, I might consider it.
Okay, I'll be your sidekick.
You'll be my alternate?
Yeah, alternate.
Yeah.
There you go.
As long as we're... Yeah, go
What
ahead.
If I
days?
may, I thought that the conversation or the consensus, or maybe it was half-baked, was as such that each planning commissioner that wants to attend will have the opportunity to do so,
Okay.
and that duty will be rotated amongst however many that want to attend the meeting and chime in. So this way, the public and the commission gets all kinds of views.
I like that better.
If I could
I think planning might have a hard time.
make a comment about that, in being involved in some of these committees in the past, as example, the Far North Glendale plan, I think we need a lead person or a front person that you have, because you do get directly involved, and it continues meeting after meeting. Items aren't finished; they're moved forward. So you need that continuity. So if there is somebody that could be the lead person, that would be good. And I like the idea of any of us being able to attend, as long as we don't have a quorum, I guess. We have to keep that in mind.
As an alternate, I mean.
Yeah, right, as an alternate to back up, because you might miss a meeting, and then you want somebody to fill in for you. But that's my suggestion, that you have somebody that's going to be at all or most of the meetings, and then allow any of us to support you and attend when possible.
Okay. When is the first meeting?
I think they're on Monday.
June 17th.
June 17th?
That's the dilemma. Why
And
I
do we
couldn't-
know how many meetings we have? Or
We
we'll
anticipate
find out?
about 5. Hopefully it'll be done in
Okay.
4, but
5
it'll
meetings.
probably be 5. Hopefully not more than 6.
Over what duration?
6.
I believe that the schedule basically is June 17th, June 24th. July, we start a little bit late due to the holiday. I think it's the perhaps 3rd Monday of July, and then 2 weeks after that. So the 15th and 29th.
So who could make the June 17 meeting?
I can.
I teach
Oh,
on
my.
Monday night.
Okay, so you can't.
I can.
You can?
Yes.
Okay. Would anyone really prefer to be there? June 17? Okay, so then why don't we, Mr. Storian and I will attend the June 17 meeting, and then we'll report back the following month, and then we can go from there. Yeah,
If you would allow us to second the deliberation here, please.
sure. Maybe we might change our mind after the June 17 meeting.
Yeah, I mean, after listening to the dates.
Yeah.
What's going
To make it.
Still in the air.
Oh, really?
And I'd like to have your Ms. Landrigan and Mr. Sheets' participation in there because,
After
we
the
do
17th
have
is my last
different viewpoints, and it would be helpful to have you guys part of that.
But I do have a few other, as long as these Mondays don't interfere with the thesis class, I can.
Okay.
I only have to appear.
You don't. This is a regular class you're going to do.
We're still
Mondays?
Well, I'm
with
finished.
the public, so we either have to. I mean, if we're going to talk, they have to hear. what
Members
we're
of the
saying.
commission,
can
if
hear
I,
with them.
if I might
I was just hoping that.
interrupt, and Chair
Okay, go ahead.
and members of the commission. Yes, I think it's quite noble for the Commission to want to rotate this responsibility. However, my concern from a Brown Act perspective is that this is sort of a standing committee. It's a task force of the Commission, which will have a key member attending and then an alternate. If it's rotating, then there could be a consensus developed outside of the public hearing that would potentially be a serial meeting, in a sense, that would violate the Brown Act. So my recommendation to the Planning Commission would be that you designate a principal person to attend the task force and then have one alternate for that purpose, to avoid that problem. There will be other opportunities for other task force at different times, but that would be my recommendation to avoid that potential problem with forming a consensus and a serial basis amongst all the members outside of the public forum.
And my recollection of the discussion last time was I thought Mr. Sheets was not interested. I don't remember you bringing up, Ms. Landrigan bringing up a problem with teaching. I do
don't have a
recall
conflict on that Monday night when it started.
Yeah, and then the other, I remember Mr. Historian also expressed an interest, and then Mr. Lee was absent.
I mean, if we're going to want a recommendation, I would recommend that the chairperson, Mr. Isayan, be the lead person.
Yeah,
He's expressed interest. I think it's good. That would be my recommendation. And
Mr. Historian, I think he has also expressed interest.
He can support it. So that would be my recommendation.
I do feeling well, don't I? As an alternate.
Well, you got it. You have an alternate.
That was how you expressed it.
Okay,
That would be my thought.
so is that okay? So if we're okay with that, then let's move forward, and then we'll attend on June 17th,
Mr. Alternate.
and I'll be available. Is there any other update? Okay. Do we have any comments from the commissioners? Yes.
In the Glendale News Press the other day, there was an article written by some of the historic preservation former commissioners in the historic preservation community about the concerns of lack of initiatives for incorporating in historic buildings into any development as opposed to just demolition and rebuilding. And I would think it would be something I would like us to look at the areas, in some of the areas that we look at, that kind of information is I would love it if the city did have incentives for incorporating and keeping some of our older, wonderful buildings. I mean, we do that for the Alex. I mean, if somebody decided, oh, the Alex is ugly, goodbye, all of a sudden, we would be very, I think, poorer as a city. So I know we aren't the Historic Preservation Commission, but I think that the history of our community is important in our development and in reviewing. So I would like to suggest that we address that very heartfelt letter in a manner that is thoughtful.
I mean, obviously, this has not been agendized for discussion, so I would.
It's a commissioner comment.
What would you suggest to agendize as sort of a response from the commission? Is that
I would be open to suggestions.
okay? Why don't we agendize that? Yeah.
Well, I would just also note that South Glendale plan, which is the next area plan being developed, we just got a grant for historic context statement for South Glendale to prepare
The
that.
EIR, right?
Well, the historic context statement will be part of the plan, and it could form the basis for any survey of that area that we do. And anyway, in any case, that's the sort of policy level document that such ideas are probably best suited for.
I do see a lot of value in the survey, that there's been so much talk about it, because A, it takes the surprise out of all kinds of developments. B, we know what our stock is. I don't know, though, if we have the resources to be able to complete that. That's something that I'd like to see follow through.
I would too.
Because this way, if you have 1,000 assets that are deemed historical, whether regionally or nationally or locally, these are important. There is no questions about it. But we need to first identify them. And I don't know where we are with that process. Perhaps we can ask the staff to bring us some sort of a short report on where that process is at, and let's concentrate on something tangible, work it as opposed to, and let's get this to culmination and then take the next step. That I would agree to do.
I think it's a good idea to get an update on what's happening with the South Glendale, because we were hearing a lot of things, and it would be good to get the commission on board. An update that would be helpful. I would also like to request in maybe a month or so, if this commission changes at all, and we have a set new commission, to get a review, very brief orientation on the things the commission oversees, the variances and making findings. We had a presentation some years ago from Michael Garcia, and it would the previous attorney who was here, and I think it would be helpful to orient us and also the commissioners who do stay on, I think it helps us going forward with the cases we deal with.
Open space.
I have one more announcement. Coming up in July, the Glendale Parks and Open Space Foundation is going to be having their fundraising golf tournament. It's a two-tiered thing. You play, and if you play well enough, you go to the finals, and that'll be on our website, which is www.glendaleparksandopenspace.org. And if you're a golfer out there, or any of you here, we would love to have you participate. It's a lot of fun, and it would really help all of our parks and help us to make sure that we are adding more and better amenities to all areas of Glendale. Thank you.
Is there a date set, Commissioner?
Yes, I believe it's I didn't state the date, but I believe it's July 20. I'll look right down here. It's July 25th. And then the playoffs are on July 29th, which is a Monday. And the 25th is on a Thursday.
Of course, spectators are welcome, and we love them to make donations anyway.
Indeed we do, always.
Because I'm going to be one of the spectators as opposed to the
Yes,
one.
nobody would ever want to play golf with me. They'd pay me to not play. So maybe I'll go out there.
Very good.
No, very good.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, guys. All right.
All right.
We going to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.